I finally got it. It finally arrived. Let's see what Scopely sent and why it matters. In anticipation of Chapter 2 of the Age of Annihilus, Scopely sent me this box in the mail. Now, we're going to go ahead and open it, see what's inside, and see what it has to do with the future of Marvel Strike Force. Truth be told, I already opened it. I wanted to take a peek, really get an advanced view of what we're looking at. And of course, what we have here is a figurine of Blastaar. So Blastaar, again, confirmed to be the Chapter 2 character, the next legendary character in Marvel Strike Force. So what about this particular figurine? Why is it here? Why did they send it? Well, I think there's some really telling clues in here. Let's go ahead and dig in and dive and find out what's going on. For example, the character's appearance. The character's appearance is the typical version of Blastaar. He has the glowing hands, which he uses to discharge his energy burst, why he's called Blastaar in the first place. We have gray skin. We have a big lion-like mane. We have the blue armor on his chest and feet. Again, that's all typical of the normal expression of Blastaar that we see in Marvel Comics. Now, again, Gideon, why would you question that? Why would there be any other way to go? Well, because there have been different versions of the character, right? He's appeared in other video games. He's appeared in a animated TV series. There has been multiversal versions of the character, and they have not always looked like this. Perhaps similar, but not necessarily like this. So I think this is leaning into the type of character that Blastaar is going to be. I think he's going to be very, very similar to the mainline comic book version of Blastaar. Again, you can say, Gideon, why would you say that? Wouldn't any normal person come to that conclusion? Well, maybe. But the thing is, that necessarily has not been the case for all characters when it comes to Marvel Strike Force. For example, if you look up Kestrel and go to the Marvel Wiki, you'll find out that Marvel Strike Force is its own universe, right? They have their own variants on the characters. So they could have taken some lateral, they could have taken some leeway when it came to Blastaar. For example, if we look at Annihilus, right? The way Annihilus is being presented in the storyline is different than how he appears in the comics, right? So far, what we know of him, his motivations, how he's operating is not the same, in my opinion, as how he would operate in the comics. He seems really intent on dominating people's mind, right? Bringing them into his hive mind thought, controlling people, or perhaps a play on the cosmic control rod. I guess we'll have to see as the storyline continues. But Annihilus in the comic books is not like that. He is a nihilist, nihilist. He wants to destroy everything. He does not want to control. During the Annihilation event, they go from planet to planet, just like Locust, like the insectoid version that he is, and they simply plunder, dominate, destroy, and move on to the next world. They're not trying to assimilate people. They're not trying to take over cultures, right? They're not trying to conquer and expand their influence. They're literally just trying to exterminate everyone else. That's how Annihilus in the comic books is portrayed. But here in Marvel Strike Force, it seems that he's doing something a little bit different. Even the way he wears his armor is different. There's gaps, right? You can see his muscles, things of that nature. Again, the Annihilus in the comic books, generally speaking, that's not the case. He's afraid of being injured. He's afraid of being harmed. So he's encased in a suit of armor, kind of like Iron Man. He really doesn't have weak spots for the most part. He doesn't want to be injured. Again, in that way, he doesn't want you to see that he's been physically harmed. He always wants to exude this presence of dominance. Okay. And that's a little bit different so far than the individual that we're seeing inside of Marvel Strike Force. So again, going back to Blastaar, I think what's going to happen is they're going to lean much more into his main logical mindset. What we're going to see is the same expression that we would see normally in the mainline version of Marvel Comics. So for example, right now, slight spoiler, if you haven't finished the Franklin Richards storyline yet, what has happened? Our heroes, they're trapped, right? They're trapped in the negative zone. There's a large fleet, presumably the Annihilation Wave is coming. The totality of Annihilus's forces, and there's just a small band of heroes. How are they going to survive? Well, I believe that they're going to meet Blastaar next up in the story, that somehow we're going to see him. He's going to come into the picture, and he is going to save our small band of heroes. Why? Because that's how Blastaar operates. He is the #1 rival to Annihilus in the negative zone. He's not a good guy. He's not a good guy by any means. He's an expansionist. And when his empire ran into Annihilus for the first time, the two clashed, and Blastaar is the one who came out on top in that war and actually took the cosmic control rod from Annihilus, proclaiming himself to be the king of the negative zone. Very interesting. So this character is extraordinarily powerful, right? We might not be familiar with him. He's a little lesser known character, but he is significantly powerful. And one way we know that is with the information that, again, they gave us here with the figurine. Notice there's this little comic right here, right? There's this little comic right here. So what we're going to do, let me show you some of the information that we got out of that comic book and see how it pertains to the rest of what we believe is going to happen in Blastaar's storyline. Now, I just want to take another look at the figurine here. I was doing some research, and you notice this one here doesn't have the energy on his hands, right? So there are different versions, different collectibles that you get of this character. Now, but once again, though, we want to really get into this issue of the Avengers, the triumph of Blastaar, and what it has to do with Marvel Strike Force. Well, for starters, it shows us that Blastaar is a very formidable opponent. So we see in the Avengers there, number 310, who's on the ground? We see Captain America, Namor, Thor, She-Hulk. In this issue, he even gets the best of Eternals like Icarus and Cersei. Blastaar is no joke, right? For many of us, we might not know who he is. He's kind of an obscure character, but Blastaar is no joke. When he shows up, there is definitely a power check that is happening. His main rival is obviously Annihilus, right? Both of them exist in a negative zone. Both of them have a philosophy on how to take control. Blastaar, once again, is a conqueror. He wants conquest. Annihilus just wants to wipe people out, but Blastaar, he's like Genghis Khan. He wants people to acknowledge that he is the strongest. He wants people to kneel. He wants people to bend the knee. Annihilus doesn't care if there's anybody left, but Blastaar wants to make sure there are people there to be subject to him to acknowledge his greatness. So again, during Blastaar's rule, right, he took over his planet of Balur. He's a bad guy. He expanded, and at some point while he was expanding in the negative zone, he ran into territory that was controlled by Annihilus. So war breaks out between the two, and during the course of the conflict, Blastaar is the one who emerges victorious, and he takes the cosmic control rod from Annihilus, naming himself as king of the negative zone. And this is very important. It really has to do with his personality. Again, he's like Genghis Khan. He just wants to conquer, and he wants people to know that he's the one who is in charge. He will put his ego in check, however, if he needs power to get over the hump and beat Annihilus. So in the Annihilation event, he did indeed help the heroes to put himself in a position in order to conquer Annihilus. And I think that's something that's going to be happening in the game. Again, we have the Annihilation wave bearing down on the Fantastic Four. There's nobody to help them. I believe Blastaar is going to intervene and then realize that Strike has this army that can be used to push back against Annihilus. He will then ally himself with us, with Marvel Strike Force, and we'll begin our push back against Annihilus. Now, the main thing is he still wants to be known as the king. So again, at the end of the Annihilation event, we see there Blastaar on the right-hand side, and what is in his hand? The cosmic control rod. And he once again proclaimed himself to be king even of our universe. So that's going to be a double cross, I think, somehow in the storyline for Marvel Strike Force. We'll have to see how it goes. We got to recognize this guy means business. He has come up against a lot of different people. He fought with the Fantastic Four on numerous occasions, and it didn't stop there. He fought with the X-Men. He fought with the Inhumans. He fought with the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's able to fight Thor to a standstill without his hammer, right? Thor without Mjolnir, he was able to best him actually in hand-to-hand combat. So we're just establishing he's smart. He's a military strategist. He's very strong. He's a conqueror. And so I think that that's going to play into how they represent his kit. So I think his passive ability is going to be called King of the Negative Zone. Perhaps it's going to have some kind of charge mechanic. The more charges you have, the more damage he's going to do. He might have some weird penetrating attack, Or maybe he'll automatically get offense up and give his enemy defense down, making sure that he hits hard against any opponent. He's also been called the Living Bomb Burst. I think that's really going to play into one of his abilities, perhaps his ultimate. I envision some type of massive energy attack, some kind of explosion, a chain detonation is what some people called it. That could be represented if he destroys an enemy. If he KOs an opponent, perhaps he continues to attack, just like Deathpool or something of that nature. Perhaps he removes barrier before the attack to make sure there's maximum damage. Ability block the main target, maybe adjacent targets. I don't know. Now, we always want to keep in mind, Blastaar, he's not afraid of a fight, man. He's not afraid to get all up in your face and handle that business. So perhaps his special ability will be called Always Armed. He'll deliver a mighty uppercut that'll deliver a shockwave that hits his primary and adjacent targets, removing buffs and applying disrupted and defense down. So then you can still attack the character that you want to and don't have to worry about tanks getting in your way. His basic attack, I think, is going to be just like a short laser burst, right to the chest of the opponent. We're going to call that the Balurian Strike, as a shout out to his Balurian heritage. So it'll just be an energy blast to the primary target, or do a lot of damage, clear a positive effect, and then perhaps, since he is a legendary character, we got to juice it up somehow. So if the target has vulnerable, maybe he'll stun the character or something of that nature. Now, where are we going to use Blastaar? Quasar, again, is a war specialist, even though we use him everywhere. I assume that we'll be able to do something similar with Blastaar, but perhaps he will be made for Cosmic Crucible. So he always wants to be the king, so perhaps he will be indeed the king of Cosmic Crucible. So that's 2 legendary characters in the bag. We got Quasar. We know that Blastaar is the next legendary character. Who do you think will be the person for Chapter 3? And then how do you think they're going to tie all these individuals together to make a super team? In my mind, I think there's going to be like a negative zone trait or an annihilation wave trait that Annihilus will have. If it's activated, it'll really soup these characters up. That's what I think. Again, a lot of this stuff is speculation. I want to know your thoughts on the matter and what will be the new type of currency. I'm really interested to see how things go as we move into Chapter 2.